Welcome to episode 87 of the World Builders Anvil. And today's topic is part 2 of the Apocalypse series. And this is going to cover society and culture. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. And now we're back with Mikkel.
It's Michael.
Michael. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit Russian today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hard forced puns. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to jump right in.
Let's go right in.
I'm expecting there to be a lot of ridiculousness on this
Just
episode.
as a warning
yeah.
to the people about to listen to this episode, Michael, and myself all appear to be in a relatively strange mood today, and we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, we've been laughing over stupid stuff since I arrived. Like when I got out of my car and Jeff started accosting me verbally in the driveway. So... So part 2, society in the aftermath of an apocalypse. So we have a series of questions up on the board just to give us jumping off points for the conversation. And the first one is, what is left of the old world?
And I think this kind of goes back a lot to episode 87.
Well,
I'm sorry, 86.
86, yeah.
You can't seem to get that show number right.
I can. You're the one. You're the one that said it.
Okay. Yes. And so a lot of it is, if your world is blown to bits, there's probably not a lot left. However, if there was a virus and this is the decision you get to make when you blow up your world, or how you destroy your world.
Yeah. Whatever your apocalypse is, it's going to determine what's physically left.
Yeah. So how much of the ruins are left? And think about this too. Like, even if you look at some fiction like Lord of the Rings, there's like the First Age and all of these really impressive structures that are there. None of them were built by anyone around. It was all built in the First Age. So a lot of times, on a smaller scale, you can do this too. Or especially when you blow up your world, you have to realize how much is left of the old world for the people to remember.
Yeah. I mean, and that also is going to be determined a little bit by how long ago the apocalypse occurred. So if you've got, say, people that are like in their 50s, but they remember the apocalypse, or maybe they were children when it occurred, so they can talk about it in legend. Like, I remember when there were ice cream trucks.
That's right.
And we used to go to shul.
Yeah, no, and some books cover this well too, where I don't remember the book.
Looks like rhymes with 2 words.
Maybe.
No?
No clue.
You got nothing.
And it's a relatively new book. I will look it up and put it in the show notes, and I do apologize.
Is it all an apocalypse book, or that's just something that occurs in the book?
It's something that happens before the book, but the story starts before or right at the apocalypse, and it was a viral apocalypse.
Okay.
But one of the things was someone was talking to like a child, saying how much harder it must be on them. And the child looks up, she's like, no, I think it's the other way around.
Well, she's got no point of reference. She doesn't know what the old world was like, so she doesn't know what she's missing. Yeah. But the child was sharp enough to understand that.
Yes.
And thus said, well, it must be tougher on you because you know what you're missing. You remember what it was like to go down to Best Buys and eat at McDonald's. And not have to hunt down your food and
to make podcasts about world building and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's tough these days. So what's left of your old world? Do you want to talk about a planned or an occurred apocalypse in the world of Gardul? Did Gardul ever have, or has it had an apocalypse, or will it have an apocalypse?
Gardul, as a point of reference in the story, has an apocalypse that occurred very early on.
So can we go to that timeline right after?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
I think it's kind of
cool. And
that
doesn't screw around with your book?
No, this is all mythology for the world where my people are.
Okay. These are my people.
These are my people, where my peeps are at. So essentially there are 3 main races at the beginning. Dragons, true giants, and another group called the Prima.
So, wait, are the true giants kind of like Brazil nuts?
No. I don't get the reference.
I think they are. Because what is a Brazil nut? It's not from Brazil. But if you go to Brazil, they just call them nuts. So are they true giants? If there's no other races but 2 other races that aren't giants, wouldn't they just be called giants?
Yes, but this is people referring to them, not them talking about themselves, where they don't call themselves giants.
What do they call themselves?
It's like orcs don't call themselves orcs.
No? What do they call themselves?
No. Kerfluffle. What does it matter?
It matters. Well, look, I would identify myself as a human being, even if something else would call me something else, so that's what I call myself.
Really?
Why? What do you call yourself?
We can't put that on this episode.
God. I call myself Oneg the Prober.
I know. Ooh.
It's actually a character name.
Yeah, blame it on the character.
No. That's a legitimate character name from the Marvel Universe. I'm not kidding. They had a character called Oneg the Prober. As you can imagine, because there's not a whole ton of titles, comic book titles with his name included, or movies.
Well, I think I saw one last night about 2 a.m.
Yeah, he didn't do well. So, true giants, dragons, and what was the third?
The Prima.
The Prima.
Okay. So, each are a servant of one of the 3 gods that are credited with creating Gardul.
Okay.
And so each have their own jobs, and the gods interact directly on the planet with the races. It's like they are the ruler. Festus is the ruler of the giants.
Okay.
Mystere is the ruler of the dragons. And Boric is the ruler.
Remember that one too.
Yeah. Boric is the ruler of the Prima. And he's chaos. And so he teaches them to question because he thinks it's funny.
And me being a questioning person, I kind of want to ask the question. I'm gonna ask it, but I'm gonna request that you don't answer. Because you said these are the gods credited with creating Gardul, which makes me think they're not the ones that actually did it. Because you said it that way. I don't want an answer, and the reason why is because I could keep asking you Gardul questions, and that'll get us further away from
the topic.
The apocalypse,
yes.
Exactly. So, what is left of your world? We're still on the first question.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, can you say what the apocalypse was?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the apocalypse? If you start devolving, what's the word?
Well, you're actually wasting more time in this than I was planning to. Yes.
If you start devolving too far, I'm just going to cut you off and we'll get and drag you kicking and screaming back to the question.
Okay. Fair enough. So essentially, like anything, you start having the races having battles with each other over their gods. You have you should be following our, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our god's bigger than your god, the classic god.
Yeah. Well, my god, it was cold that day.
Oh, wow.
My god was in the pool. All right, listen.
Festus the Shriveled.
It was in the pool.
I was dead at the time. Okay. So, but the Prima start questioning, and the Prima become very powerful very quickly. They could sort of encompass the powers of the other races, but they stop listening to the gods because sort of as their patron god, the god of chaos, they don't do what they're told. And they do sometimes, but they don't do all the times. And it's really hard to tell when they are and when they're not. Mm-hmm. But they start becoming more and more detached from the gods and what's going on, which leads to a war.
Could one argue that that is the perfect way to worship a god of chaos?
Boric would agree.
Okay.
Hewitt is never mad.
It's hard to piss our god off.
That's right. If we listen too much, he gets really mad.
Do what I tell you, except when I tell you.
Exactly. But sometimes you better.
Not all the time.
Confusing.
Don't listen to that.
But so essentially what happens is they end up convincing some of the giants and some of the dragons to renounce the gods, saying the gods are the ones that are causing all of the death in all of the people. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, the god of order, unlike the god of chaos, has huge issue with this. Right. And so he personally starts just wading through tons of these races. And very powerful races, but once again, it's a god. It's a different playing field.
Okay, so I was about to say, so to be clear, these gods are playing a very active role.
Very.
So this god
walking
physically
on the earth.
Goes to Earth and starts slamming these races.
Or Gardul, actually, yes.
The world. Starts killing a bunch of members of all of these races.
Yes.
Okay.
And and so it starts to build up, and the war starts to spread to where the people who aren't heretics are fighting the heretics. The Prima have kind of disappeared. No one really knows where they went to. Everyone is kind of battling back and forth. The Prima come back to try and stop the battles between the giants and the dragons, which are coming, which in itself might destroy the world. As they come up, a new god is born, Thrax, the god of revenge. And it was born out of the hatred of Festus for these races for betraying him. And so when this new god is born, he comes up and he actually summons an asteroid. And so as the battling commences, the asteroid strikes. At this time, Gardul is a landmass about the size of Australia. That's all of the land on this pretty large body.
That is the Pangea of pre-whatever. Yeah,
yes.
Pre-whatever Gardul.
And so essentially, that entire area gets flummoxed. It creates this thing called the maelstrom.
Does the asteroid hit that landmass, or does it hit?
It hits precisely where the god is standing, which is at the middle of the battle of all of the races.
Okay.
Utterly destroying that landmass, creating this thing called the maelstrom, which sort of is this revolving storm that is not too far off the coast of the actual landmass. And I don't know if you ever went there. It's a storm you don't want to go into because it's...
Well, remember, a big part of Assad's background had to do with the mess.
Oh, okay. So, you might actually know a little bit more than most people.
He does. Remember, his island is on... They can see
on the
it.
edge.
They can see it from where his island is.
And
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. And so what happened was, this is created, which makes traveling too far off the coast impossible. You can maybe get away with it, but you're probably not. And true giants still exist, and they kind of come in and out of it. But besides that, no one else can figure out how to do it. And so it creates this entire chaotic scene. The dragons kind of separate apart. Part of their curse, they can't even really interact with each other. They don't really like each other anymore. Plus anything that interacts with them that has intelligence wants to kill them. The giants go on this quest to build and sell. They're obsessed with it.
So some of you haven't mentioned the Prima. I'm sure you were getting there.
Yep.
I'm interrupting. So some of these races did live through that.
Yes.
And
relatively unscathed.
So now they get to talk about the old world.
And they talk about the old world and the old gods and how all of the new gods are just derivatives of the old gods. And in a way, they're almost atheists to the point where it's like you shouldn't worship the old gods because if they come back, it's bad.
But they don't like the new gods either.
Well, they're saying the new gods are just the old gods disguising themselves to fool people so they can build up enough faith, which will empower them enough to come back to the physical world, which would be bad.
Okay.
And the truth of that is we'll leave that as unknown.
Can we segue into another world?
Sure.
And the only reason is because I have a hard time empathizing with some of this world. It's tough for me to talk about this because you're talking about such fantastical races, which, is appropriate. There's world builders out there listening to this. That is the world they're working on. But as far as a post-apocalyptic world goes, what immediately comes to mind for me, selfishly, is a human society.
Oh, jeez, you're so self-centered.
I know. I'm self-centered and closed-minded. That's why I'm on.
The whiteboard says it all.
It does. It's true. It's true. So, obviously, we're going to talk about Fallout, and I think that's a great
segue into something besides my world.
Point, yeah.
You find it's the easiest way to get me off the topic of my world?
Well, I love your world. We could spend the whole show just talking about that, and I feel like that might not serve the listener as
of
much
what we're doing
as much as covering other topics would be. So
very good.
Absolutely, no disrespect to your world because I love your world. So, Fallout, classic, post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear war Earth. If you're in a shelter, correct me if I'm wrong, you are in you're in a stasis. You're awake the whole time?
It depends.
Depends on who you are.
It depends what shelter you're in.
Okay.
So some of the shelters and I believe we know enough about Fallout 4 to say, Vault 111 was essentially people in pods. So they were frozen in stasis.
Right. That's because that's what I'm thinking of because I saw that preview. So.
Exactly, and that's the way that shelter is. Some are fully functioning closed societies. And there was actually one in, I don't remember the name of the actual Fallout shelter, what number it was, but there was one in Fallout 3 as well, where the few people who were in this one were actually all in a virtual reality stasis. Which is actually a really cool mission.
Yeah. It's effectively the Matrix.
Yes.
So they have a false reality to keep them occupied while they're asleep for... Now, but are they asleep full stasis and they just have something to occupy their minds? Or are they just asleep and being fed nutrients so they're still aging and time is still passing for their bodies?
I would say not. And the game didn't explicitly say that, but Fallout 3 takes place, I believe, 200 and some years after the big war. And they're still alive in the pods when the character gets there.
Okay, so presumably they've been sleeping the whole time.
Yeah.
Isn't the new Fallout only 150 years after the...
I believe it's 200 as well.
It is still...
I think it's actually a little before Fallout 3.
Okay.
So for some reason I want to think Fallout 3 was like 225 or 250 years after. This one's 200 years after. But I do know there is some discussion of the area. There's actually a quest from the Institute, which is a part of the new area. Obviously, MIT. I'm assuming it's MIT would make the most sense, or it could be Ben Franklin Institute, but has a group has a story in Fallout 3 as well. So I don't know if it's supposed to be leading up to that story. Who knows? It's one of those things.
But the point is that after the nuclear war, there is still plenty of, I'm not going to say society, we'll stick with the term old world. There's plenty of the old world still around. There's rubble, there's buildings, there's equipment, there's people, there's stuff to find. There's all kinds.
And certain areas are better than others.
Well, of course, if you're at, the ground zero for, a missile that came inbound, it's just dust. You're not going to find much of anything.
But too, you look at Southern California from the early games or Fallout 3, massively, lots of detonations went all off in those areas. Fallout New Vegas, not so much military stuff in the area, not a lot of population, not very many nuclear explosions around the area. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's not much of a strategic site, Vegas. It's in the middle of nowhere. So.
Yeah, and they probably bribed the people, say, hey, you can come here afterwards if you don't blow us up or something. Who knows? Yeah, right. But essentially, the nukes never went off in the Vegas area. So it's different. It's like you can drink the water. It's clean, which is completely different than if you play the first 3 games. All of the water you find is radiated. Still, because you're only a couple hundred years later, so it hasn't broken down yet.
Right. So that's another thing you're going to be dealing with, like, of what's left in the old world. What's salvageable. Like, this is still physically here, but I can't do anything with it because it's giving me cancer as I walk by it.
That's right. And too, it's like if you have a Star Wars Death Star apocalypse moment in your story, there will be nothing left of the old world, or very hard to find.
I don't think you can really qualify that. There's no story. We covered this in the last episode. There's no story to be told.
Not on the
entire world.
There could be microbes on some of those rocks that survive, land on another planet, billions of years later.
So your story is Spore.
Oh God, yeah.
It's just junk monsters. Anyway, all right. Well, so how many are left is the next question we have on the board. Like, if there is a post-apocalyptic society, how large is it? What's the population? As the writer and the world creator, we discussed this before we started the show. It's kind of 2 questions. 1, how many people are left on your world? And 2, if you're telling it from a story perspective, like whether it's one character or a small group, how many are in the group? So, like, you might have a story that covers, say, 20 people. And they never see anyone else. There might be, hundreds of thousands of other people still alive on the planet, but they're so remotely located or just so far away from this particular group that effectively they're alone. Because they never see
They might
anyone.
even know there are other people, but maybe the story is to get to the other people.
Yep.
And there's another question that you have to ask yourself in that is not only how many people are left, if there are other people left, do they even know? Because, it was like, a story you told me about last time, where they don't think there's anyone else left alive, in the story that you were coming up. No one else, they didn't think there's anything else alive beyond that, those 2 people. So maybe, there's a lot of stuff left. Maybe there's very little left.
But it's certainly going to affect the society that pops up
Most
like
definitely.
if you only have 20 people
Mm-hmm.
and you have no reason or at least no proof to believe that there's anybody else alive, the structure that you create to get along with those 20 people is going to be very different.
Yes.
You know, like if they think there are more people, then if they think there's more people and there's reason to go get together with those people, they're probably going to try.
Yeah.
But let's say for sake of argument, you have 20 people and a really good place to live.
Yes.
You might not bother. Like, look, we've got this really fertile farmland and the farm's already set up. We got all these tools and, you know, Billy's dad was a farmer. So, you know, we got some basis and you know what? No one blew up the library.
That's right.
So
we saw the explosion down the road. We know that town's gone. We don't want to go there.
We could probably make something of this. I mean, look, they already have an irrigation system set up and the river's right here.
Mm-hmm.
So
the river runs through it.
A river runs through it. Not an apocalyptic movie. So how many people were left? How many people were left in your apocalypse?
And how many people know of how many other people? Because I think that hugely changes the story. You know, if you think you're alone or very few people.
Do you think we're alone now? You just totally ignore that.
Yeah. So,
Jeff, how many of us are left?
At least two of us.
There's definitely two, but I sure wish there were more.
Listen here, Michael. If you don't straighten up, I'm going to cover my eyes and destroy the world.
No, please don't. Please don't. I'm right here. Well, depends on your perspective how many people are left.
True.
I can definitely confirm, too, I wish there were more or maybe one less.
Either way
is fine by me. So, of the people that are left, what are their views of the old world?
I think that's a huge one because, you know, there are certain times where, like, say, Planet of the Apes, which I can't believe we haven't thought about before.
God. Did we even discuss that in the prior episode? We wrote it down when we went through, but we didn't put it on the board. I don't think it was on the board. Yeah. We didn't put it on the board. Yeah. Oh, that's such a good one.
Yeah, and, you know, the idea that obviously the people left behind were a new species. For the most part.
That's an apocalypse that we didn't write down. That's a new apocalypse. That's, if you ask me, apocalypse by evolution.
No, because
or you could call
the
it
apocalypse. It was a nuclear war, and over time, the monkeys evolved and the humans devolved.
Don't call them monkeys.
I'm sorry,
they're apes.
Damn dirty apes!
Damn dirty apes!
It's worth an explicit for that. Okay,
so. Views on the old world. Does your group of people do they have a reverence for the old world? Do they miss the old ways? Yeah. Or would they be like your average middle class American who would be glad to be rid of their credit card score and just happy to be done with the old system? Woohoo! Now all we have all we have to do is forage. You know, there's a lot of people who'd be fine with that. There's a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, now I don't have to deal with the internet or people or television, telemarketing, and bills. I just have to go look for water and maybe hunt something.
That's awesome. And then they're like, wait, how come I can't log into Second Life? Yeah. What the heck's going on here?
I miss my PlayStation.
We need to get the power back on, people.
Jeff and Ivy with a crank generator. It's my turn.
My arm is sore.
I don't care. I'm up to level 3. God, I love Fallout 4.
It's so realistic.
You realize you're playing an apocalypse game after the apocalypse. I know, ironic, isn't it?
Bonus, I actually got an achievement for it.
That would be hysterical. Like, that's something to put in.
That'd be a good skit.
That'd be good, yeah. Like, just like a mushroom cloud in the background. Boy, the sound effects in this game are really realistic. That's impressive.
Yeah, no, you can even look a little bit at the real world towards smaller events and kind of get the thing like at the fall of the pagan side of the Roman Empire, there was a lot of backlash from the Christians to old pagan institutions. Unfortunately, a lot of those involved where the scholarly people were. And so one of the theories that caused the Dark Ages was when the Christians sort of overthrew the Hellenized pagans in the Roman Empire, they started going through and destroying libraries and scholarly institutions because it was tied to the pagans that were quite brutal to them.
Heretics, from their perspective.
From their perspective, they were heretics. They were just, they were the problem. And so obviously anything attached to them must be bad, like, say,
knowledge,
medicine,
medicine, plumbing,
engineering, plumbing.
Yeah, we don't need this. We don't need your heretic writing. You and your books.
That's right. And the irony being, really, if the Muslims in the time, the people who were the followers of Islam, did not hoard knowledge that they could find to learn themselves, to make themselves better, most references that we know of the Roman and Greek world were saved in libraries in Baghdad or Cordoba. And then as the West started coming out of that frame of mind, through trade, started to get the information back about this old world, Rome and Greece, which then that's what created the whole Romance period in Western society, because their idea was not only were these old cultures there, they had flying cars and, they could go to the moon because they did everything and it was all perfect. And so, all of the Renaissance came out of getting that knowledge back from the Arab world and people going, look at what we lost. And in some ways it was better.
Was there actually texts that said there were flying cars?
No, that's me.
You're exaggerating a little. Okay,
but
you're telling me a very accurate historical account, and you're throwing in a fantastical exaggeration that I'm like, well, wait a minute, are you serious?
I'm a fiction writer. I lie.
Well, that's fine, but if you shouldn't stick it into a historical account.
Yes, I should. I'm a fiction writer. I lie. Now, the thing is, though, like the whole goth movement.
I want you to add that statement each time you do it.
Like, say,
So the laser weapons the Roman soldiers use. I'm a fiction writer. I lie.
Mm-hmm. But there's actually a movement called the Goths. Mm-hmm. Not the Goth barbarians who destroyed the Western Roman Empire, but the Goths in the Renaissance. And they were a group that believed that the pinnacle of society was Roman and Greek culture. And when it was destroyed, we could never recapture those glories. And so I exaggerate by saying that they thought there were, rocket ships and lasers on the freaking sharks' heads. Mm-hmm. But they didn't think those things specifically, but they thought there were achievements. And in a way there were things that definitely like achievements that, we're still just recovering to today and lost knowledge. But in other areas, they had already surpassed the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. People lived a little bit longer at that period of time than they did in the Roman Empire. A lot less war, which is probably a good thing. That's something that's been slowly getting less throughout the ages. So, there were definitely some improvements, but, the Goths and the Romantics from that period of time were kind of off. But in a way, and it's funny because it's like we accuse the Muslims in the Middle East of doing this now, but it's the same thing that the Christians did back in the 400 AD. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, it's a risk sometimes, and unfortunately, when it happens, you lose really important things.
We lost concrete for a long time.
Well, we even got concrete back, but it wasn't as good.
Yeah.
And even now, it's like we have reinforced concrete, which is better, except it's not as good.
No. Like you look at some of the buildings that were built, 4,000 years ago, and they're still standing.
Yeah.
That's because they had great concrete. There was something they did.
That we just don't quite know.
We've never been able to recover.
And that's the amazing thing, too, is the concrete, to me, is the most amazing one because, it's like reinforced concrete is stronger. But it's because we put giant honking metal bars in it, which reinforce it.
Right. You didn't find that back then.
It's like one of the big churches, and I forget which one it is in Rome itself, was an old pagan, the Parthenon. But it has like the world's biggest dome. Not now, probably, but
at the time, and certainly for a long time.
And probably until like a new dome stadium recently, and it's a concrete dome. Ugh. How
did they build this?
Yeah, it's amazing stuff,
and still standing?
We might not know, and we don't really know how they made concrete. We do know there's some different ingredients, but so who knows? I guess maybe someday we will know and make concrete as good as the people did in blah blah BC.
Yeah. So we have what are the views of the old world? I want to add a question in there, which is basically like, what is the world view now in the post-apocalyptic existence? So like, are you living? So are the people that are alive in the post-apocalyptic existence, like, what is their worldview?
Yeah.
Do they have a mentality where, and some of this leads into a couple of the other questions that we have on the board, but like, are they thinking about only what's right in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
Only I need to hunt for food today, or I'm going to die in a few days. Mm-hmm. I need to make sure that we purify some water today so that we can drink and not die in a few days. Or is the society large enough that they can have a reflective perspective on things that are going on, as opposed to just dealing with what's going on, but actually have, an outlook about it.
Or two, it's like, how long does it take before the society gets large enough again to do that? Mm-hmm. And how many generations of people have been taught that the old world is evil and not realizing that aliens had come down and blew up the world and left, and thinking the old world did it to themselves.
Right. I don't like how Grog runs the village. Grog's a Republican.
That's wrong. Yes.
What was the Simpsons episode where the aliens took over the world? And
which one?
The two, I don't know.
There's probably
a couple, but the two main aliens, the names of which I don't remember.
Is that the one with the cookbook where they keep rubbing off more of the name and
that's a reference to this old Twilight Zone. Yeah. To serve man a cookbook.
Yeah.
The two aliens had taken over the two presidential candidates. So no matter who you voted for, you were voting for an alien. And they were both going to do the same thing at the end of it. And at the end, it's this tyrannical rule of the aliens enslaving mankind. And somebody's complaining to Homer about what it is. And it was say one of them's Klaatu and the other one's Verata. And he's like, oh, the rule under Klaatu is horrible. Don't look at me. I voted for Veratu.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So.
Well, it's kind of there was a South Park episode with that joke too, where it's Obama and McCain, the world's going to end tomorrow. No matter.
I remember that episode.
Yeah. And then after the election and Obama wins, it's the next day. Nothing changes. Which is probably a bit more realistic.
Yeah. That's funny stuff though. So, if your society has, if your society's big enough, what's everybody's general opinion about how they feel about their day-to-day life and their...
And that's really true with all societies, though. That's not really a post-apocalyptic thing. Yeah. So for me, the difference is you have, especially depending on the time period you are away from it, you have that new element of the old world possibly being really fresh, maybe a yearning to get back to it, maybe a hatred for it, and a repulsion to anything that stood for it.
I think for the purposes of the show discussion, though, you have to consider that it's at least close enough to the apocalypse that society has to be aware of it and be reflecting upon it. Because if not, all you're talking about
is a new society.
You're talking about a burgeoning society, and that's a different discussion.
Yes.
So, but I think it's still an important part of the discussion because while it is a post-apocalyptic society, it is a burgeoning society.
Yes.
Because if you're living in a community where there's only 20 people,
it really has this new variable.
You have to create basic society structures. Are we a large committee? There's only 20 of us, so let's all kind of vote and agree on what we're doing. Or is there one guy who we trust his leadership and he's making all the real decisions?
Yes.
Is it a dictatorship? Is it a republic?
Or maybe it's neither. It's some old hunter-gatherer tribe that is just trying to survive.
Right. If you have it that small. And if you have it that small and with that few resources. So in that assumption, I have to believe that the apocalypse destroyed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to a viral apocalypse where it doesn't destroy stuff, it just destroys people. So now you have tons of resources kicking around and a lot less people.
I'm the chair of the Fed.
Right. That's right. So you have, I think that scenario would probably lead to mankind dying out first. Let me explain why.
Okay.
All right. Let me be even more specific. Mankind in the United States.
Okay.
In a first world country, especially in the United States, where generally we're all so reliant on the systems that are in place. Unless you are a farmer, you probably don't know how to grow food.
Hold on. I got a text. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Sorry, was that your...
that was
your IT people or something?
Yeah, I actually... it was my turn to go in Yahtzee.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So this is my Clash of Clans. I needed to check up on it.
That's right.
So modern American society, unless you know how to go hunting, forage for food, grow your own food, you're relying on the systems. You go down to the store, you buy what you need, you get your fresh water, da-da-da-da-da. So let's say, for sake of argument, a virus wipes out most of the country. And now you're left with small pockets of people that don't have those necessary skills. Well, what are they going to do first? Scavenge. They're not going to start planning for the long-term future.
No.
They're not going to start, we got to run down to the library and we have to learn how to plant food.
Until you get past your day-to-day necessities, you can't think beyond.
Right. So you're going to be, okay, we're going to go town to town. We're going to be nomads, basically. Yeah. We're going to go town to town to town, like locusts, use up the resources, and keep moving until we have no place to go.
Define new generators that still have gasoline so you can charge up your old phone so you can place some more Fallout shelter.
Yeah, well, of course, because that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There won't be a whole lot of other things to do.
Nothing else to do.
You're going to be playing a lot of Fallout Shelter, which is available on August 24th.
13th. Unless they changed it. It was 13th.
Next week. That's exciting. Or maybe right now, depending on when this episode launches.
Actually, maybe last week.
Maybe last week. So, if that's the case, and you have a bunch of people that are now just growing accustomed to going place to place to place to scavenge for their needs, they're not thinking in the long term. They're not planning on creating more. They're just using up what's there. Now, and maybe there's enough out there that they'll be fine. When you think about how many bottles of water are in all of the supermarkets throughout the country, you could probably live your whole life, depending on how much of the population was wiped out. Yeah. And if we're going to go with apocalypse, last episode we decided that was 90% or more. So if 90% or more of the people in the United States got wiped out, the remaining 10% or less could probably spend a great deal of the rest of their lives scavenging for water. I'm not going to say for food because eventually shelf lives and canned goods go bad. Like even canned goods that are supposed to last for a long time, unless they're going for MREs.
But see, now I can actually tell you right now why people would want me on their team.
Oh, I can think of a lot of reasons to have you on the team.
Yes, but one specific, I can't farm. Fishing is boring and stuff. I never hunted before. I can't shoot, so I could probably learn how to do it.
You could probably learn to hunt.
And
you are patient.
I have no trouble killing an animal to eat.
Me either.
If I needed to, I wouldn't want to for fun, but if I needed to,
if you need to, sure, absolutely.
Now, however, I do know how I could steal military armored vehicles with a 17mm ratchet.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
But okay. In a
and I can't say here now that is classified.
In a post-apocalyptic world, what need would you have for a military vehicle other than basic transportation?
Protection of what you got for in case you run into another hunter-gatherer tribe that you call scavengers, which is really a hunter-gatherer tribe. Right. It's just instead of hunting animals and stuff, like I said, you're looking mainly for water, especially what you know is clean water.
Right.
So, it's a protection of goods. So probably what I would do is I would sort of fortify a hill, use some of these as pre-built bunkers.
But if you are fortifying a hill, that's assuming that you're in a singular spot, which means you should be looking into farming because you're only going to have so much distance to cover outward from that place.
What you would do is you would have patrols, long range patrols to go out from that area, come back, and you would swing out to different cities in the area to head out towards those, bring the supplies back to the one centralized location. It's the strategy of it. So it's more of a Hayek or whatever they call that place in Turkey, which there was a hunter-gatherer society that had an actually full functioning city with trade routes to Asia, or they were in Asia, but to India, before they had agriculture.
I think India does qualify as Asia.
Well, actually, Turkey, the place I was talking about where it's at, is also in Asia.
Well, that's why I was about to
clarify. Which is why I pulled back from saying Asia.
Forget Asia. It's all Asia.
It's all Asia, but, they would have trade routes set up and specialized citizens why they're hunting and gathering because they would swing out and they had people going in different directions, bringing it all back to this central location. And then they figure out farming, they're like, wait, this is easier. Yeah.
But, so getting back to my initial point is that I think in that scenario, they would eventually run out and then it'd be like, oh crap, we don't know how to do what we need to do to live.
Yeah, but I think what you do is you start with scavenging and you start figuring out farming as you go.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, even if you start with farming, winter's in 2 months.
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
Yeah, right.
Wait, couldn't we have this apocalypse back before spring?
Yeah, that would have been way more convenient if this apocalypse had occurred like tail end of winter. So that we could get the things planted and start, and then harvest would come fall time. Are you doing the math? Yeah. Why are you doing the math? I'm just talking about planting and post-apocalyptic. Shut up and pick up the crate of water. We have to get back to the fortified hill.
If we start now, You're right. We'll have that harvest next March.
And we'll all still be dead.
That's right.
We'll all still be dead. Till Jeff kills a buffalo. So, which he won't be happy about. Because the whole time he'll be swearing about not having a 17th millimeter ratchet. 17 millimeter?
17 millimeter.
17 millimeter. I'm going to remember that.
You would.
Stupid metric system.
And you'll probably have one of titanium just in case.
No. Oh, so for the listeners, in respect to the post-apocalyptic hobbyists, I'm choking. I was creating a go bag. Now, I don't actually believe that zombies can occur. Certainly, some sort of horrible things can occur.
Zombie hater?
But I was creating... No, I love zombies. But I was creating a go bag for like a zombie apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And I own a titanium crowbar. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look in the Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks, who also wrote World War Z, which both are great and really fun books. The irony of the Complete Zombie Survival Guide is it's actually a good survival guide. Mm-hmm. While it does talk about, surviving in a post-apocalyptic world, most of what's in that book is legitimate survival skills. It's about camping and hunting and fishing and stuff like that.
With occasional how to fight zombies.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So in the section where they're talking about zombie weapons, Max Brooks's, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, best anti-zombie weapon for your untrained person is a crowbar. Crowbar can be used as a tool. It can be used to open things. It can be used to crush a zombie skull. The desire to have it be titanium is it is 10 times stronger than steel, and it's like twice as light.
Yeah. Much easier to swing.
Much easier to swing. And if you're on your foot, if you are, traveling by foot and subsequently, scavenging, weight becomes very important.
Titanium ring.
Titanium ring. Jeff is handing me his weight. Wow, this is super light.
Yeah.
Wow, it's weird. You'd expect it to be heavier.
Yeah, it doesn't look right.
Like plastic.
It looks like a big wedding band, and then you feel it, and you're like, I don't notice it.
Yeah.
But they do warn you when you buy these. They're like, make sure not to leave it on your finger if you can't get it back off.
Because
good luck cutting it on your hand.
Cutting it, yeah. My ring is also not your standard metal. Mine is tungsten.
Tungsten steel, huh? That's so heavy.
It is heavy.
It looks cool, though.
But it's a sharp-looking ring. But anyway, my crowbar, I have a titanium crowbar. And the thing that's difficult about a titanium crowbar is getting one. The only people who tend to have a need for a titanium crowbar is scuba divers. Because steel, of course, is going to get torn apart by salt water. So a lot of their tools are titanium. And at the time I was looking to purchase one, it was more expensive for the titanium than it was the cost of the crowbar for the company that made it. So they stopped making them because they're like, it's not worth it.
Cost effective.
It's not a cost-effective product for them to make and produce. So I had to wait like 2 years until they started making them again.
I remember you researching like the optimal length, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So for my dollar, the optimal zombie killing crowbar length is 28 inches. Now the reason for that is because it is long enough to keep, when you swing, to keep your hands out of the zombie's potential arm reach. But it's also short enough that you can strap it to a pack and it's not too unwieldy. Because the next stage up is like 32 inches or 34 inches, and that becomes a bit unwieldy. Tough to run. Well, you're still going to use two hands with the 28 inch, but you can run with it. You can strap it to the pack and run, and it's not a bother. Whereas the other one's just a little too big. It's a little cumbersome to have on you all the time.
I wonder if we can get the guys who did the Bruce Lee ping pong commercial to do a Bruce Lee ping pong commercial, but using titanium crowbars instead of nunchucks.
That would be interesting. Can a zombie be playing ping pong on the other side of the board? Like him.
Oh, he could really tear him apart that way. It'd make it more.
It'd be fun to watch.
We could make a whole movie on that.
we segued really far there.
But it was a survival tip for the post-apocalypse.
It was, but it came from something. We were talking about something, and we both segued out of it. I got to the Max Brooks thing. We were talking about the crowbar, but what was before there? We were talking about farming and scavenging.
Yes.
So that was the big thing, was dealing. We're still talking about societies. So dealing with other societies. So now we're talking about raiding scavenging societies. There, you're talking hunter-gatherer, but it could just be like marauders at that point. Just people that are...
But still hunting and gathering.
I mean, in a post-apocalyptic society, you're talking about survival of the fittest. There's going to be tribes of people that are just like, look, you're not strong and we're not carrying your weight.
I have to step in here to defend the term.
Which term?
Survival of the fittest. And this is something that is often misused by people like yourself, meaning the strongest, most powerful survive. Really, the term means that the creature who can successfully survive with the least energy output wins the genetic race.
So, the strongest might not be the fittest. The smartest might be.
The smartest might be. And it's actually even harder for smart things to survive because more of your energy gets used in your brain. And so you need to give up energy in other places to make the brain stronger. Or better ways like humans figured out how to cook food, which made the stomach use a lot less power to digest it, which left a lot more energy for the brain.
And subsequently, we can't digest as much. Like the honest truth is, in a post-apocalyptic world, the average person, the average American, I'm going to go with, is going to have a real tough time because our bodies are not designed to be eating
raw grass.
Well, as much raw food and as much unprocessed meat as we would be eating in a post-apocalyptic world, assuming that all other resources, packaged food, were done with, and now you are forced to.
You would really need
hunting
to hunt, and you'd need to know how to start a fire, which most people could not do.
I can.
I said most people.
I know. I'm just saying, but going back to
one of the big scavenged items would be a lighter.
Why I would be a good pick for your post-apocalyptic survival team. Aside from the fact that I actually have read some survival books, and I do go.
I do have a crowbar,
and I do go camping. I have a great crowbar. Is that I do know I do have some of those basic skills. I don't hunt, but I do know how to make a few traps. I don't know how to farm, but I'm not bad with houseplants. So.
Same thing.
So I'm just saying.
I suck with houseplants, so to me, that's a huge step forward.
Got a greenish thumb. So there's that. All right, what do we have next on the list here? Because we're getting a little far off topic. Not that I don't love it. I'm a big fan. Our next question is, how far are you from the event? Now, this is a two-part question because we wrote place and time. So...
We've talked a little bit about time already, so let's finish that one off first.
Okay, fair enough. But let's also pick the apocalypse for discussion because it's going to change the answer.
Yes.
If you're talking about a virus or you're talking about nukes, it's different. With virus, it's going to be pretty much everywhere. With a nuke, it really matters how close or far you are from it.
So let's start with the nuke version first here for time. So time is hugely important. Yeah. Because 10,000 years after the bomb, and this goes back to what we were saying before, it's really not, but 10,000 years passed.
Let's create a hypothetical for this discussion. Let's say that it is fallout. Everyone's in shelters, and they're all stasis shelters, and they all wake up. They're all networked, so they're all programmed for the sake of rebuilding a society to wake up at the same time once it's safe for everybody to leave their shells. Not this one's safe, but these other ones, the half-life is still not worn out. So they keep the ones that...
all of the shelters.
All of them open at the same time when all the dust has settled and you can come back up and start repopulating.
Okay, so
that's the scenario.
Going to be a bit of time after the event.
Long time. But let's say also for the sake of argument that the old world has not completely rotted away. So you have everyone that has come out of the shelters remembers what it was like. Exactly, because to them it feels like yesterday when the world was in good shape and, oh my gosh, that's the bomb siren, get into the shelter.
Yeah.
And they wake up to a dust bowl.
Okay. Maybe.
Or growth, or new growth.
Because it's after all of the... It's after all of the... Because you figure...
Yes.
Plants will survive in radiation. Yeah. The world actually survives... and
everything.
We're not very good at knowing how well the world deals with the radiation because it's designed to absorb it. That's all the sun is emitting radiation, and the Earth absorbs it. I think it's an area in science we're kind of weak on. We have our preconceived notions. Like, I know if I dose you with, a whole bunch of units of radiation at this point, you will melt.
Yeah. I'll turn into a chud.
Sorry, it's a really bad movie.
It's a really great movie, and everyone should look it up. And they should buy it, and they should go to www.garduel.com/Amazon for all of their Amazon needs, including a copy of Chud.
Which I will say is better than Waterworld.
Yeah. Yeah. Not in production value, though.
No.
Chud
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Waterworld did have a good production value. Wow, that's one thing.
The plants are growing,
Mm-hmm.
all of the pods open, and everyone's
Now, are they the
crawling out of the
only
basement.
sentient beings there?
That's up to you.
No, there's elves and dwarves.
Yeah, that's what has sprung up.
Yeah, of course.
So
Unicorns.
there's magic now too.
Yeah.
So is what you're saying is Garduel a Fallout future?
It is.
Ba-ba-ba-ba.
Technically, it is. There was a huge war. Life, as we know it, was destroyed. But it was essentially...
No. Don't make an analogy. I'm literally saying that is Garduel Fallout future.
And I'm going to have to say no to that because I don't want to get sued.
Okay.
But as an analogy, you could argue that. Okay. But in a much different start.
So we're still talking about how far everyone is from the event, time-wise and place-wise.
Yeah.
I think for the purpose of the discussion, the hypothetical that I'm creating, time doesn't matter. I think place is what we need to discuss.
Well, time does matter because the thing is, if it's past all the fallout falling, it doesn't really matter where they come up.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it could be, 5,000 years?
Yeah. Let's say it's 5,000 years in the future. Who cares that there was a nuke 20 feet over?
Well, true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except there's a big crater.
Exactly. So now you've got these people, people who came right from a fully functioning world coding society to Dust Bowl.
And this kind of goes back to what you said about the U.S. I think if there aren't the facilities within there or some real severe brain power and knowledge that comes out, they all die.
Yeah. Back to the shelter. It sucks out here.
How do you turn this thing back on?
I was an accountant. That's how I paid for the shelter. What am I supposed to do now?
I'm not. Does anyone get a wireless signal?
I'm going to call my mom. She's in a shelter about 200 miles from here. So basically what we're saying is if the apocalypse is coming, don't be an accountant.
Don't be.
Isn't your wife an accountant?
Well, unless you're my wife, in which case you'll be fine.
Well, I'm certainly not worried about your wife having a place in the post-apocalyptic world. She will create a place.
She will be the queen.
But it just dawned on me as I said that, wait a minute, your wife's an accountant.
Yes.
Don't be an accountant. She's going to be downstairs. What?
Well, just be glad the producer's not in the show.
But she would be glad that we made the Amazon plug. So how close to death are you is another question up on the board.
This is a huge one because this goes back to how much your society, your new burgeoning society can think.
How much they can think?
Yeah, well, about things beyond food.
How much spare time do they have to think?
And it's really spare time is probably the better way of putting it.
When you said, how much can they think, I'm thinking, what are they, all idiots?
I know.
Kill it!
Yeah. I got a bunch of shooting gamers.
So what's with your, this is my tribe, the cool guys. What does your whole tribe consist of? Most of us are hunter-gatherers. A lot of our guys can hunt. Yeah, we're all first-person shooters. Everybody's really great with a PlayStation controller. That's not gonna
look. We can move in ways that we see them doing video games.
You realize that in podcasts they can't see.
I'm doing that for a year.
I know, which is funny, but it'd be funnier if the listeners knew what you were doing.
No.
Okay, never mind. I won't describe it. How close to death?
Yes, and this goes into how much excess time you have, because that's what builds superior products, whether it's figuring out how to retinker old items or coming up with new ways to survive better. You need time. So there's a risk element to say, if I want to take the time to make a net to catch fish, now I know if I can get the net to catch fish, I can catch more fish.
More fish and
then I'll have more abundance.
And subsequently
but if I don't have enough food to make the net, I have to find a way to make sacrifices to do it. And that's essentially, in a way, it's the fundamentals of capitalism. It's what risk am I willing to take to make the advancement that is needed that I can then trade off, because then I can start trading nets to people for food. And maybe I don't fish at all anymore, and they're starting to gain more fish, and I become a net maker. But I have to make the risk that by this point, when it's not money involved and it's your life, it takes a lot of courage or lack of knowledge to go, I'll just make a net tomorrow. I won't catch any food and I'll be fine.
Yeah, and then I'll spend a couple of days.
So it's either a really lucky person or a person who took a risk and could pull it off.
So maybe really brave, maybe stupid.
Maybe stupid or maybe both.
If I make a big net, I can catch big fish.
That's right.
That'll take me 4 days.
The lake is, 74 acres, so if I make a net 74 acres big,
I can catch the whole lake in 1 day. I think you're thinking a little too big, Bob. A little too big. Maybe reel that in a little. See what I said there? Reel that in.
Or what you do is
that was a fishing joke.
You go to the, what? I don't even know what fishing is. There's I believe it's a tribe, but there's definitely a bay in Brazil where they fish with porpoises.
Like side by side? I choose to believe it's side by side. Like
it is.
Friends. You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding.
I was about to go on a whole diatribe of a joke.
Yeah, no. Essentially what they do is, and I think it only happens a certain time of the year when there's certain other fish moving in the area.
So let me make a guess. The porpoise scare schools?
Yes.
Nice.
So what will happen is these wild porpoise, and they're not domesticated at all, come into this harbor, and it's been going on for generations. And the harbor is muddy. So the fishermen have all of their nets, and they can't quite see where these massive schools, I think, of mackerel that are going through there are coming. Mm-hmm. The porpoises will come in. They know where the humans are. They drive the fish back towards the humans. When the fish start panicking and jumping, the porpoises will leap out and eat the fish. The humans will throw nets and get a bunch of fish. Both of the predators who are working together actually make out. The porpoises go back off into the ocean. The people take their huge haul of fish back in and eat well for as long as the fish last.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that would be the other thing.
See, my side-by-side analogy and vision was that the fishermen were like spear fishermen. And they were in the water with the porpoise. And the porpoise? Yeah, supposed to be riding. Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. All Aquaman style.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So. Who doesn't love Aquaman?
Who? Point them out. Who doesn't love Aquaman? You don't love Aquaman? Are you aware of like semen? More modern Aquaman? I'm going to skip right over that joke. Like Aquaman sending great white sharks to pummel people. How cool is that idea? How terrifying are encephalopods? Imagine being able to control them. Hey, go get that guy.
Hey, I'm in Windsor, Connecticut.
I'm just saying. 2/3 of the planet's water. He's got a bigger domain.
And most people don't live there.
How do you know who and who is not living there?
Science.
Okay, you can't bring science into an argument about a comic book character.
No, to me, it's just... He's always been lame, a whiner.
Jason Momoa. That's all I have to say.
Okay, this is one of these new modern recreations to try and make him less lame.
No, because the Aquaman of the modern age is Jason Momoa. He's been badass for a long time. Everyone just is stuck in the mindset that Aquaman is Super Friends. Exactly.
Which is when I grew up, which is the only Aquaman that will ever be in my brain.
Wrong.
And any new Aquaman is a poser of the loser that was on Super Friends.
Okay, fine.
I mean, almost as cool as the Wonder Twins.
I was about to say, they're not Wonder Trends. They're not,
they trend on Twitter much more than Aquaman.
Wonder Trends. We're Wonder Twitter trending. So, how close to death are you comes down to how much spare time the society has. Mm-hmm. Does your post-apocalyptic society have time to think about anything other than basic survival?
And in a way, the larger your group is, let's say you have a few thousand survivors, it might be more difficult than a group of 50 because, a group of 50 finds a Walmart somewhere and yay! Everyone gets food, everyone gets water. But a few thousand, you're not having fist fights breaking out trying to get the scarce resources.
If you have a group that big, you would have to think the only way they would have been able to congregate to that size is if there are resources that could support a group that size. Because otherwise they wouldn't be together.
Well, it depends on how long it's been since the event.
Yeah, true.
So, I mean, if this is a sequential thing where this time 1,000 survive, But 6 months later, they've either broken apart. If the area can't sustain stuff, that's the most likely result.
We're moving west. Heard there's internet out there.
That's right. Just reboot it.
There's no internet. So another one, obviously, if we're going to even get to this next question, we have to at least allot for the question that we just asked. How close are you to death? You've got to be far away from death if this question applies. And that is, what is, no?
Wrong. Absolutely wrong. The economy is the first thing that comes about.
I think only if you're going to go with the concept of a trade system, a barter system.
That's economy.
Fine, but when I say economy, I'm talking like actual economy.
Oh,
not.
So am I.
Stop. Go ahead.
I want to go grab a book from over there from Mises that you can read.
No, I don't want to argue about the definition of economy. We spent too much time arguing about the definition of apocalypse. So
yes, and this one I would crush you in because I actually know what I'm talking about here, and obviously you don't.
Obviously.
But really, I mean, you only get to money because barter becomes inefficient. Because it's definitely simpler to go, I need fish, you need corn, let's exchange.
Right.
That's simple.
But when you have where you have a three-way setup, where like
the more people, the more items.
You have fish, and you have corn.
I'm the jerk that makes broccoli, and I'm trying to get.
No one likes the broccoli trader.
There's one guy, but he makes kale, and we're both dying. But you know what I'm saying, though.
His family's really healthy, though. They got to know something that we don't. All they do is trade with the fish farmer.
They offer to clean. He pays them to clean their thing, and they live really well. We don't know why. Yeah. They're just picking kale.
Right. So the basis of economy was really the only reason I even put that up there.
You're thinking like bottle caps?
Well, no, but that's a great example. Was so that we could reference some of these fictional references that I have on the other side of the board, like in Metro 2033, their economy is based on bullets. Because
the makes a lot of sense.
The apocalyptic threat in that storyline is these creatures that basically wipe out most of the planet, these shadow creatures. So you really don't want to be anywhere if you don't have the ability to kill something.
There was one show I was watching, and I watched, I think, most of the first season, maybe the whole first season, Revolution.
Yep.
And it was all right.
I think I've watched 2 seasons of Revolution.
Yeah, I kind of lost interest a little bit during the second season.
Being an electrician, I have a hard time with some of their BS science.
Well, it's a huge leap to get the fact
that... it's a gigantic leap.
But especially because it interferes with what you do as a trade.
Yeah, exactly.
But
science says no.
But the guns that used bullets went to the bigger people. The bigger people had guns with bullets. Other people were reusing muskets because it's easier to make musket balls, which is interesting. And it was kind of neat because they're actually trying to rebuild society, where in most apocalyptic scenarios, there's none of that. It's just max everything.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But then you take a look at something like what's the name of it? It's Half-Life 2, where society has devolved into a really oppressive, tyrannical society. So if you are in city centers, there is society, but as soon as you get beyond the walls, there's like wasteland. So it's like,
like Judge Dredd.
Kind of, yeah. So it's like you've got society here, but if you decide to leave, it's Mad Max out there. Yeah. So same thing with The Last of Us. The Last of Us is like that. Like in the city centers.
Is that
kind of zombie-esque? Is for the PlayStation 3.
Oh, okay.
So with The Last of Us. Within the cities, there is society. There's a police. There is, rationing of food distribution. So there is a societal setup. There's obviously a black market for economy pops up. But if you leave the city and you're not allowed to, which is also kind of interesting, you'd think it's kind of interesting when a society has to force the society to be a society. And that's kind of what's going on in the beginning of that story in Boston. You have the city and the government requires that you stay within the city limits. You can't leave. So it's forcing a society on a society. So what if you're like, look, this system sucks. Like, I want to take my family and I want to leave. I think that we could do better on our own. They won't let you. You have to sneak out. You have to find a way to escape.
Actually, I have a great analogy about this.
Go ahead. Go for it.
All right.
Come on.
I'll go.
Our last episode was like an hour and a half. You're gonna balk at an hour? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with all the BS, it's probably like 20 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
But at the end of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire.
Are you going to real stuff again?
But this is interesting what you're coming from, right?
Okay.
There was a huge issue where, because of high taxes, because the empire is no longer expanding, they all of a sudden need resources from people inside of the empire to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Start raising taxes. The whole foundation of serfdom is born when the emperor, I think it was Valentine, he outlaws people because there are people now moving to Greater Germania to get out of the Roman Empire to live somewhere cheaper. And they are...
So they're forcing people out of this.
No. The people are leaving and he's trying to stop it because his economy is being ruined.
Oh, I see.
Because people are fleeing the taxes. They're going to the tax haven of Germany.
Okay.
And so he's trying to stop it. And he actually passes a law where you are tied to your family is tied to the job you currently work. And you can't move. You're tied to the land and to the job you're doing that day. Your kids are, their grandkids are, everyone from that period of time. That led into the whole modern idea of serfdom in later Europe, where you're a cobbler because your father was a cobbler.
Yeah.
And your last name is Cobbler because they're very inventive with names back then.
Did you know my last name is Miller?
And I bet you had a grandparent that was a miller.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably back. Probably like a.
But that actually goes back to a fear of losing people.
Cooper, Miller, Cobbler, all these.
But to try and hold the empire together, if you got caught leaving the Roman Empire, you needed imperial dispensation. You had to have a reason to be leaving. What is your business? If not, you could not leave the empire. Yeah, and then they fell. So
there was a lot of real world.
But the real world's always the best inspiration for these things, and take an event, maybe make it a little crazier.
Yeah.
But the real world is always the best inspiration.
Add magic.
That's not real.
No, well, no, that's what you've done. You take a real world society and add magic.
Isn't magic real?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, Jeff, Matt, of course. No, I'm not trying to imply. What I'm trying to imply and say is that societies that you know and that we know from history books, obviously they wipe the magic out of the history books.
Yeah.
You, with Gardul, have just taken that and changed them a little bit, and you've put magic back in where it belongs.
Yeah. Yes.
That was close. So, all this came from, we were talking about the basis of economy, and we got into society, locking society into society.
Because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, economy and societies are hand in hand. So the smaller it is, the more informal it is, and probably the growth in economies go to, okay, we're getting enough food, honey now. Miller, you're going to start milling the grain that we find. Why? Because of your name. We're just going back to that.
Yeah. We're going back to that. I don't know anything about milling. I actually could probably get the power generators.
You know what? No.
Jeff, there's generators right down the road. Like all the lines are run.
Miller?
We just need to, but I could.
It's in your blood.
I could start, we could have electricity.
And turn the mill back on.
Water pumps.
No.
Water pumps. All right, you're in charge. I'm holding the big stick.
I'm the libertarian dictator of this new world.
Wait till next year when I get the big stick. Things around here are going to change. That's the basis of our clan. Every year someone else gets the big stick. And it has to start with the oldest person because they're probably going to die sooner and gets passed around. So after about 15 years, a 10-year-old gets the big stick. And then the whole society is based around the
Miller, your job is to bring me candy.
Oh, we haven't found a candy store in 10 years. Get in the truck.
We need to pull a coup on this kid. He's taking over. We can't get back.
He's in charge of the military.
He gives them candy.
Why is the military full of 15-year-olds? It's like look to the Maze Runner or the Hunger Games.
I thought you were going to go to Fallout again.
No. Why? Is there a child military in the Fallout?
There's a town called, I think it's...
There's always a creepy child town. They have a creepy child town.
There's a creepy child town, and then there's another spot where it's creepy adult town where all of the kids get kicked out when they reach a certain age.
Not, of course, the big one is The Walking Dead, but there's another show that I think the Sci-Fi Network put out. And it was on Netflix for a while. I'm going to have to think of it to get the name. But it is exactly what The Walking Dead is. It's a post-apocalyptic zombie show.
Yeah.
And there is a society that they come across and they think, oh man, this is perfect. But what they do is they kick out all of the men once they reach the age of 13. So it's funny because these people are traveling along and along the street they see, because anyone
like a dead kid here or there.
Yes. Yeah. They keep coming across kids and they're all about the same size. And they're like, they come across the kid and they go through his pack and it's got, there's like notes in it and they identify the child's name. And, then they go along the street a little further and this kid's long dead. And they keep finding the bodies of children and they find a kid that's alive that is walking and, they're like, hey, little man, what's going on? And they start talking to him and find out what he's like, well, I'm going to meet with my brother and my father. He lives in this place and he's heading in the right direction to whatever that place was. They go, he's going to Phoenix. It's, yeah, I just got to keep walking down the road and I'll get to Phoenix and I'll get to see my mom or get to see my dad and my brother. I had to leave my mom and my sister, but they passed his brother a few miles back, his body a few miles back on the road. And this kid is looking to be about in the same shape. Like they only give him so much food and so much water and the dream that it's not that far away. Yeah. And the kids stubbornly just keep walking in that direction until they collapse. Yeah. And that's, that the society.
And some make it further than others. Yeah.
Exactly.
But this one was interesting because they actually had two towns. But you got kicked out, and the little kid town was actually the better place to be. The big kid town is like surrounded by super mutants who are stealing them, and slavers are going in there, and they're barely surviving. And none of the kids at the other place even know what's going on.
So how do the little kids? How is the little kid society?
Oh, they're armed. They got guns, baby.
So the older kids don't.
Yeah, but you're outnumbered because you're the last one. So you're now 13. Bye. Or whatever.
So wait a minute. Do the little kids kick out the big kids?
Yes.
So how are they repopulating their populace?
That's the wonder of the story. Oh. But I actually have no idea. That was my thought playing at that point. I'm like, why are there more little kids here?
Yeah, there should. Who's creating all these little two kids? Yeah.
And that would actually be better if there was actually something devious behind them.
I'm sure there is, and because it's Fallout.
And it's possible.
There's definitely a story behind there. So
even if they didn't say it here, there is. Yeah.
And the last thing we have on the board is hunting and farming. I think we covered that enough. I want to just point out a couple more economy things on our list here. So in Fallout, it's bottle caps.
Bottle caps.
So bottle caps are effectively dollars.
Gold pieces.
Yeah, whatever monetary thing. Waterworld, dirt-based economy.
And I would...
Waterworld, Jeffrey.
And I would have to say that dirt is what I think of when I think of Waterworld.
Okay. As I had mentioned, Metro 2033, it's a bullet-based economy, which creates an interesting tension in the game because it's, do I want to save this ammunition so I have it to kill something when I'm inevitably going to get into a fight? Or do I give up these bullets for precious resources that I need, whether it be a bigger gun to fire the bullets that I now have less of, or food, or
I need food,
or a gas mask because there is radiation, like some sort of radiation protection on medicine. So it creates an interesting tension because you're just like, oh great, found more bullets, so now I can shoot more things. But you're like, I really need medicine.
That's right. Food would be good as well too, and I might hit that person and eat them. I mean, that deer and eat them.
And I can't really remember of the list that we have on the board. I can't really remember.
Book of Eli, I don't remember them really dealing with the economy.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was
and there was stuff. There was trading,
trade, because I know like he went to the guy to charge up the battery, and that was a big deal. Mad Max, it's gasoline. I mean, actually in Fury Road, they talk about gasoline, bullets. Like they say, got to go to the bullet farmer. So there's a place where all they do is make bullets. And obviously with the gasoline, there's a place where they still, refine gasoline.
Which actually makes me want to see that one even more now, because they start to add.
Good. It's really good. Like it's an engrossing story. Like, more engrossing because of the characters. But, and it's funny because the movie is called Mad Max Fury Road. Well,
Which just sounds cheesy.
Well, no. It really, I think it's quite with specific reason, because Furiosa is Charlize Theron's character. And really, the movie should be called Mad Furiosa, the meeting of Max. Because she meets Max in the beginning, and Max is throughout the story, but he barely speaks at all. And they don't cover a whole lot about.
So she's really more the main character.
She's much more the main character. Yeah, and she's a great character. Like, they get into her history and they get into all the things that have been going on, and it's really cool. And it's very sad. It's very emotionally compelling, which it draws you in more than older Mad Max movies. Not that I've got anything against it. I'm a big fan of the series.
But there's more character tension.
There's a lot more going on. Yeah. So I highly recommend. Okay. Yeah, Mad Max Fury Road. Great stuff. So what is the world builder task for the day?
Well, the world builder task for the day would be to take a society that you have and form it up from the point of destruction. Think about when it was destroyed, the old world, and sort of take the bits and pieces, the remnants that you want left, and start twisting it into what it's going to be post the apocalypse.
And I would also say, if your story isn't including an apocalypse, maybe consider what basic societies are like, burgeoning societies, and maybe cross-reference them, make them compared to your modern societies, whatever societies you're dealing with in your story or in your game or whatever you're building, whatever world you're creating, and make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, if you have some sort of society, like if you are creating some kind of tyrannical society, like a Hunger Games society, is the fact that society exists, does it make sense that you've evolved to there? Or did you just say this is what society is like? Like, is there a good enough reason for the society to be like that? Basically, know your backstory.
Yeah.
And the world building task for today is
which is what we just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. The real world task for today is take a look at your own society and make sure that you're a contributing member of it. Don't be so selfish.
By that, he means get me a Pip-Boy.
Get Jeff a Pip-Boy. Thanks for listening.
I feel extra pathetic. And as always, make sure to go to Gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under Podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at Gardul.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike while the myth rolls high.